What happens when your biggest neighbor stops visiting overnight? Streets, once bustling with accents and camera flashes, are now eerily quiet. Hotels sit half empty, restaurants shutter early, and local economies begin to bleed millions. What could cause such a dramatic change? Why are Canadians, once America's most loyal tourists, now refusing to cross the border? It's not just politics, it's personal. From trade wars to national pride, something snapped. And the fallout? It's brutal. Some states, which depended heavily on Canadian dollars, are scrambling to survive. You might be shocked by who makes the list. If you live in one of these states, you've probably already felt the chill. Let's dive in and uncover which states are feeling the most heat. Number 3? It's a real shocker. Tourism is often referred to as the lifeblood of many US states, especially those on the border with Canada. For decades, Canadian visitors have been a steady source of revenue, flocking to American attractions, shopping districts, and sunny getaways. From the snowbirds who spend winters in Florida to the shoppers crossing into Michigan for better deals, the economic contribution of Canadians has been hard to ignore. But this year, something changed. The US tourism industry, especially in border states, is feeling the absence of one of its most reliable groups of visitors. So why have Canadians suddenly stopped coming, and which states are paying the steepest price? Let's start with the Sunshine State, Florida. Known for its palm trees, Disney World, and year-round sunshine, Florida was once a top destination for Canadian tourists. Millions of Canadians, tired of harsh winters, used to flock to places like Miami, Orlando, and Fort Lauderdale to escape the cold. But this year, something's different. Hotels that would normally be fully booked are seeing a significant dip in reservations. Restaurants that once required a waiting list are now closing early, and beach towns that were thriving in spring are now eerily quiet. What happened? The answer lies in a complex web of factors. Rising political tensions, a weaker Canadian dollar, and the escalating cost of travel have made Florida less attractive for Canadian tourists. In 2024, over 3 million Canadians visited Florida, but in 2025, that number is expected to drop drastically. Airlines have slashed flights, and resorts are reporting cancellation rates they haven't seen in years. As a result, the impact is being felt not only in the major tourist destinations, but also in small businesses that relied heavily on Canadian spending. For decades, tourism has been one of Florida's economic lifelines, but without the Canadian influx, it's now facing a serious downturn. It's not just about the hotels. Canadian tourists were big spenders. They rented cars, shopped, dined out, and visited theme parks. Without them, the ripple effect has been massive. The uncertainty is palpable. Locals are starting to ask, will they come back? And the truth is, no one knows. Next, let's head to California. The Golden State, known for its stunning beaches, iconic landmarks, and Hollywood glitz, is another victim of the Canadian tourism decline. Canadians have long been drawn to California, whether it's to catch a Lakers game, visit Napa Valley wineries, or take a road trip along the Pacific Coast Highway. In 2024, nearly 1 million Canadians visited the state, making them one of California's largest international tourist groups. But in 2025, something's different. The decline in Canadian visitors is noticeable, especially in cities like San Francisco and San Diego. Hotels are seeing fewer bookings, tour buses are idling, and coastal shops that once thrived on tourist foot traffic are starting to lose their appeal. Canadians were not just regular visitors, they were big spenders. They stayed longer and traveled farther across the state, which meant when they pulled back, the economic impact was deeper than anyone anticipated. The reasons behind this shift are varied. A strained political atmosphere, fluctuating currency exchange rates, and a growing sense among Canadians that their money might be better spent elsewhere have all played a role. And for a state as large as California, it may seem like the loss of Canadian tourists is a small blip. But for local businesses, the hole is much deeper, and with fewer visitors, the state's tourism-dependent economy is beginning to show cracks. Let's now head to Nevada, a state synonymous with neon lights, casinos, and the sounds of slot machines ringing through the night. Las Vegas, in particular, has long been a magnet for Canadian tourists who flock to the city in droves, eager to try their luck at the tables, see a show, or simply enjoy the vibrant nightlife. In 2024, over 1.7 million Canadians visited Nevada, making them a crucial part of the state's tourism industry. But this year, that number has plummeted. The impact of the Canadian tourism boycott has hit Nevada harder than anyone could have predicted. Las Vegas hotels that would normally operate at near full capacity during spring are now sitting half empty. Attractions are offering unheard of weekday discounts, and the sounds of tourists filling the casinos are noticeably quieter. Canadian visitors were a reliable presence, returning year after year, bringing in repeat business and spending on everything from hotel rooms to restaurants. Their sudden absence is leaving a massive financial hole. It's not just the big casinos and hotels that are feeling the pain. Bartenders, limo drivers, and hotel staff who once relied on generous Canadian tips are now seeing their hours cut. In a city where tourism is the backbone of the economy, the absence of Canadians is making itself felt everywhere. If things don't turn around soon, Nevada could find itself facing a long, expensive blackout. Now, let's head to the Empire State. New York, one of the most iconic destinations in the US, is also feeling the sting of the Canadian tourism boycott. The city that never sleeps may still have its bright lights and bustling streets, but if you look closely, you'll notice something missing: Canadian visitors. From Niagara Falls to the Adirondacks, Canadians have long been drawn to New York for its shopping, festivals, and outdoor activities. But this year, that flow of tourists has slowed dramatically. Upstate New York, which relied heavily on Canadian tourists for its weekend traffic, is seeing a noticeable drop in visitors. Small businesses that once saw a surge in traffic are now reporting ghost town-like conditions, even during peak tourist season. The numbers are staggering. Some areas have reported up to 30% drops in revenue, and for businesses that depend on that steady stream of Canadian customers, the financial strain is becoming unbearable. New York City still attracts millions of tourists from all over the world, but the real trouble lies in the quieter, rural areas of the state, which depend on that cross-border traffic for survival. Many businesses that once thrived are now struggling, and some are wondering how much longer they can hold on. Texas, known for its vast landscapes, cowboy culture, and southern charm, is facing its own set of challenges as Canadian tourists vanish. In 2024, Texas saw over 1 million Canadian visitors who traveled to cities like Houston, Austin, and Dallas, as well as smaller towns across the state. Canadians have been frequent visitors for years, whether it's to explore the state's natural beauty, attend festivals, or enjoy a good Texas barbecue. But in 2025, something's changed. The absence of Canadian tourists is hitting Texas harder than expected. Local businesses that once thrived on Canadian spending are now seeing a decline in foot traffic. In smaller towns, RV parks and campgrounds that once filled up with Canadian snowbirds are now eerily quiet. The ripple effect is being felt across the state, and it's not just affecting major cities. In rural areas, businesses are seeing their slow seasons stretch longer, and some are struggling to stay open. It's clear that the loss of Canadian tourists is having a serious impact on the Texas economy. Tourism supports hundreds of thousands of jobs, and with fewer Canadians crossing the border, the effects are being felt across the state. Finally, let's talk about Michigan. This state, which shares a border with Canada, has long relied on its northern neighbors for tourism revenue. In 2024, millions of Canadians crossed over to enjoy the state's beautiful lakes, forests, and outdoor activities. But in 2025, that traffic has slowed, and the impact is being felt in border towns like Detroit and Traverse City. Canadians used to flock here to shop, fish, and relax, but now they're staying home. For Michigan, the loss of Canadian tourists is more than just a dip in revenue. It's a long-term threat to the state's economy. Border towns are seeing a 20 to 30% drop in Canadian-driven revenue, and many businesses are struggling to survive. Local officials are calling for stronger outreach efforts to bring Canadian visitors back, but rebuilding that trust will take time. In the meantime, businesses are bracing for a tough year ahead. Moving forward, it's clear that the decline in Canadian tourists has not been limited to the states we've already discussed. While the effects may vary in intensity depending on the location, the broader impact on the US economy is undeniable. In fact, as you continue reading, you will notice how the effects of this tourism boycott are spreading to places that were once dependent on Canadian visitors for significant portions of their yearly revenue. Now, let's look deeper into what's unfolding. The subtle changes happening across the United States driven by the absence of Canadian tourists, are beginning to ripple outward. The usual bustling hotspots are seeing fewer smiles, fewer photos taken, and fewer people shopping. At first, it might seem like a slight inconvenience. A missing busload of tourists here or there, and a slight dip in sales. But when you dig deeper, the layers of impact become more complex and far-reaching. It's more than just missed hotel bookings or fewer people at local attractions. It's the ripple effect that begins to challenge entire ecosystems of local businesses, workers, and the overall economic health of these regions. The fact remains, Canada has always been a significant source of international visitors to the United States. It's not just the sheer volume of tourists, but the spending power that Canadians bring. From luxury items to dining experiences, they contribute to the U.S. economy in ways that are often underestimated. When Canadians stop crossing the border, the consequences don't just affect the tourism industry, they hit a wide array of sectors that rely on these visitors for revenue. Gas stations, convenience stores, shopping malls, and even cultural events feel the impact, with a noticeable drop in foot traffic. In areas where Canadians were regular patrons, local businesses are now struggling to stay afloat. Small-town diners that once thrived on the steady influx of Canadian visitors are now seeing their daily customer numbers dwindle. The boutique shops that used to make a large portion of their annual sales in the few short months, when Canadians flooded the streets, are now closing earlier, worried about how to cover their overhead costs. In rural areas and places far removed from the big cities, the effect is even more pronounced. For many of these businesses, Canadian customers were their lifeline. Without them, survival is no longer a certainty. Yet, it's not just the business owners who are feeling the pinch. Employees working in the service industry, from restaurant staff to hotel cleaners, are now facing uncertain futures. With fewer customers and lower revenues, hours are being cut, tips are reduced, and layoffs are becoming an all-too common reality. It's a stark contrast to just a year ago, when these workers were looking forward to the busy season and the extra income that came with it. For many, the loss of Canadian tourism has shaken their financial stability to the core. The cultural exchange that Canadian tourists once offered is also an understated casualty of this tourism slowdown. Canadians brought with them a unique flavor to US cities. Whether it was their enthusiasm at baseball games, their love for fine wine in Napa, or their quiet appreciation for art galleries, their presence was always felt. The absence of these familiar faces is noticeable. It's not just about the money spent, but about the vibrancy that they brought to the streets, the parks, and the local hotspots. Now, without them, some communities feel as though a part of their identity is missing. And then there is the issue of the broader economic consequences. The tourism industry is a huge economic driver in the US, contributing billions of dollars annually. When a significant source of tourists disappears, the effects ripple through to other sectors of the economy. Airlines, hotels, travel agencies, and even local governments, which depend on tourism taxes, are all facing financial strain. Municipalities that once relied on taxes from tourism-related activities are now adjusting their budgets, wondering how to make up the lost revenue. If you found this deep dive into the tourism decline fascinating, be sure to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Let us know your thoughts on the Canadian tourism boycott and its impact on the US economy.